Hey guys, this is James, and we have a special guest here today.
Hi, I'm Glen from Crimson Lotus Tea, and we are in Phoenix Teashop in Burien, just south of Seattle.
Burien in Washington. So this is a local tea shop. This is actually my first time here, so you can see that the setup is a little bit more elaborate, a little bit different than our normal setup in my living room. So thank you guys for tuning in. So what do we have here, Glenn?
So this is our Space Girls blend. It's a tea that we, some of them right down here, you can probably take a closer shot, show it on the stream or whatever, but this is a tea that we blended in Yunnan last spring, but we released it this last December. We worked with a local Seattle artist. Her name is Burien. She helped us to create some really awesome well, we actually used some of her existing art, just packaged it in a different way, and she's amazing. We're super excited to have some of her art on our cakes.
Yep, and you can see from just looking at these that there's 4 different artworks, but all of the material is identical.
The material is identical, but people get to pick and choose their Space Girl. And we had a special deal on the site. If you bought all 4, then you would get extra wrappers if you wanted to frame it and stuff. And some people have really enjoyed that. We're also brewing in a one of the silver pots that we found last year. We were pretty excited to find some silver artisans in Yunnan who do some really cool stuff, and it's kind of interesting doing some side-by-side tastings with silver and other stuff.
So that is very fragrant, just right off of the bat. And so this is a blend of different material around Yunnan. Is that right?
Different stuff that we sourced this year. And I've been spending a lot of time, or I did spend a lot of time last year trying to work on my blending skills, specifically trying to construct interesting stuff from different sorts of materials. Working on understanding the essence of a tea, and then working to try to figure out what the pros and cons are, and trying to balance it with other material that may create something awesome. And for a couple of our teas this year, some of those blends I think turned out pretty awesome. I think Space Girls did.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess there's a lot of different reasons to blend. So does it usually just involve you sort of like sitting around the tea table, being like, okay, we're going to try like 20% of this and like 20% of this
for
we'll
hours.
See how it works.
I actually have a fairly detailed spreadsheet that I use where I track all the different materials and the different origins, and then I work with a 10-gram base and then an 150 ml gaiwan, and so then it's really easy with a 10 gram. I can do 10% of this is just 1 gram, and then maybe 80 of this and 10% of that, and kind of work on constructing, and then just keep tweaking it back and forth and figuring out what works. And then every now and then something just like really jumps out, and you're like, that's amazing. That's it. Then we try to specifically blend in really small batches. When I blend ourselves by hand, we blend in 2 kilo batches to try and make sure that the ratios stay the same across the different cakes. Because sometimes, if you just toss all your material in a big pile, blend it up, like the blend may not be accurate to what you were hoping it was.
Cool. So, and we are going in silver, as you said earlier.
Yeah. And
so what's been your experiences? You guys sell a couple different silver teapots, is that right?
When we can get them, we do.
Okay.
It's so we try to order them direct from the people who make them, and it depends on timing and stuff, and we actually have none for sale right now. But we'll probably work again with them this next year, get some more stuff made. Silver does some interesting stuff. It brightens the tea, which is kind of an odd thing to describe unless you taste it and experience it side by side. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I actually had some experiences with silver when I was in Taiwan last year. And for me, I don't know if I've drank tea from a silver teapot, but there was a silver kettle, and I was shocked when I found out that it was $1,000, but that's apparently cheap for silver just because the cost of the materials is so high. But I noticed that it really softened the liqueur, and so it was so I got to do a side-by-side versus sort of like a normal standard electric kettle. So it was interesting. The difference was definitely bigger than I expected.
Yeah, everything. When we purchase stuff from the artists, everything is sold entirely by weight. So they'll take what you want and they'll put it on a scale, and then it'll be $10 a gram or $15 a gram, and depending on basically the going rate for silver in Yunnan at that point in time. And that's a kind of interesting thing, as opposed to being like, how much is that? And then they have to look at what silver's going for that day, and then they weigh it out and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also one of the reasons you don't see a lot of really small teapots, because they don't make as much money, because it takes them the same amount of time, and it's a complicated thing. But,
yeah, it weighs less, and it makes sense.
So my goal with this one was to kind of have something that's a little different than some of our other teas. I've been wanting to try and focus on finding some material that maybe has a little bit more bitterness and astringency, which kind of goes against some of the other teas that we have, which have generally been more softer experiences. Mm-hmm. But then I'm wanting to blend them with something that kind of like balanced that, and let the brewer kind of bring out whatever they want in that. And so if you continue to brew this like nice and light, you can get a really soft, fruity, and floral experience from it. But if you push this one hard, you can get a really strong, some aggressive notes out of it.
Interesting. I would say that so far it's still pretty light, it's still opening up. So it's sort of that softer experience, softer, floral, maybe a bit. It has decent thickness to it already, maybe a bit buttery.
So we are in a tea shop, and this is live, and so we have people coming in.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're just filming a little tea video thing here, but Teresa can help you out with whatever you need.
Yeah, and I can just cut.
It's all good. It's all good. So let's try the second steep here. This one's been growing a little bit longer, so maybe we can see if we can pull a little bit more out of the tea.
Mm-hmm. And one interesting thing that I notice when I'm brewing teas, and especially young Pu'erhs, is that especially I tend to, so I guess it sort of matters sort of your brewing parameters that you're using, because I tend to use smaller devices which tend to pour very fast. So I'd imagine that you have to adjust your ratios quite a bit when you're using these larger, but I guess you have more experience using sort of these larger.
So silver is also really interesting because the thermal coefficient makes it suck heat out very, very, very quickly. And so unlike in Yixing or clay stuff where it really holds that heat in longer, and this may actually be part of what makes silver taste different, is
interesting.
You can actually touch it. It is significantly hot, and like the heat just goes straight through really fast. And so that quickly cooling down thing may have some impact in how the tea is brewed.
So it may actually make it a little bit more friendly towards Yangsheng than something like clay.
Yeah. It's getting a little bit more of those sheng flavors coming out of it.
Yeah,
but
a little bit, definitely stronger than the previous infusion. Definitely getting some bitterness, but it's still pretty pleasant.
It's hard to kind of experience Space Girls in two or three sessions. I think there's actually a lot to this a lot to this tea that I think there's much more depth to it than maybe some of our other teas. But I really liked it, and the way the brew comes out with my description of it being fruity and floral and soft and nice unless you push it really hard, I thought kind of fell into the whole Space Girls imagery as well. Space Girls nice and sweet until you push them too hard, and then I just thought it kind of played into that, which is fun. I've been kind of having a lot of fun playing with space imagery with our planet materials, and I like to call it the universe, the Yunnaniverse.
Yeah, you guys have pressed into a few different shapes for this harvest. You have like your tea balls, your space balls. Is that what
I call them planets. And so that's where we've been focusing our single origin material. So like Planet Iwu is 100% Iwu material. Planet Baiying Shan, Planet like Bangwei, and then we've got Jingmai. And so we've been trying to focus Because there's really amazing single origin material, but for our bigger productions, I like to try and put that focus into blends, and then keeping the single origin material in like the quick use single planet things, which has been a lot of fun.
So sort of the planets would be good for sort of like comparing regions.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Which makes sense. Yeah. And this tea, you pressed it into a square, the Fangsha.
Yeah.
So is the idea sort of to create a product that you can, I'd imagine the compression is a little bit tighter than your average.
To get really nice square shapes, you've got to press things a little bit tighter.
So is it more for long term as well?
We started doing this with the cats and dogs, the thing that we did with White to Tea, and he and I both kind of thought it would be fun to just this concept of like our grandkids like someday finding these teas and pressing it for the long term as opposed to pressing it for the short term. Most of our other teas are all pressed fairly loosely, and so these ones we wanted to press them really tight and just kind of see what the difference would be. And we've actually had some decent experiments with actually taking these bricks and steaming them.
Interesting.
Steaming them open, like over a pot of with like a spaghetti strainer, and kind of like steaming it, taking it off, 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, and you can actually just turn the entire thing back into mao cha. And as long as you dry it correctly, it's actually quite nice.
I've heard of that, steaming tool chas to sort of break it up and then brewing it slowly. I've noticed that White Tea also has started to press their teas a little bit tighter, and I've heard that it's sort of like a thing as far as like they've found that aging tends to be better if it's a little bit more compressed than like super loose.
Yeah, I go back and forth. I'm perfectly happy to continue pressing like our traditional round cake offerings a little bit looser. I think it just makes it a little bit more accessible for the Western audience, and you'll get to see things age a little bit faster in them. But then also kind of wanting to experiment with some material, and again, it also kind of tied into the space imagery, like something like frozen in carbonite for like 50 years or something like that. Just, in it for the long haul. Just having some fun with it.
And so is this a blend that you think you would go back to next year? Have you been pretty happy with how it's turned out?
I've been really happy with how it turned out, but I may just leave this one as it is and work on making new blends next year, and kind of making things not intentionally limited edition, but one of our other blends that we really liked this last year was Emerald Sea, Beneath an Emerald Sea, and I thought that material turned out super awesome. But I don't know, I may or may not remake that blend, and we'll just have to see. We'll have to see. It depends a lot on what material we can find, and we've also started to notice. Been there long enough to notice that some teas change from year to year, and so you may not actually be able to perfectly recreate the exact same blend from year to year. I've noticed that with Hidden Song. I had to significantly modify the Hidden Song ratio to get something that was closer to what Hidden Song was for us. And so maybe we'll press Space Girls 2, or maybe a Space Boys. I don't know.
And you're also getting more experience, like getting more years under the belt of like a lot of the materials that you've worked with a while now, so you have a better idea of sort of the trajectory.
What some things can do over time, and that's the hope, is to be able to maybe someday blend something that has a specific curated experience over the years, right? Because I've started to notice that with some of like our the Top of the Clouds, the Changtai blend, which had about like a 15 mountain blend, really noticing that has a very specific experience that comes out over multiple years, and from what I've heard, that was intended by the blenders. The blenders knew what those different mountains would do over different periods of aging, and specifically constructed the blend so that maybe in like that 10-year window, this mountain would come out while this other mountain went down. Maybe in the 20-year window, that mountain comes to the front, and that concept is fascinating.
Yeah. So sort of different layers for the different ages of blending.
This is the third steep. I pushed it a little bit harder, see a little bit more of what's going on there. But it's also not entirely a fair comparison because silver does interesting things to it. So
it's interesting. I'm definitely enjoying it. It definitely, I feel like the first infusion I didn't get a whole lot of bitterness, but it's built up, and we're getting a pretty solid darkish yellow there. So it's looking nice. And do you mind if I take a poke at the material?
Please do. It is quite hot, which is why these things are wrapped the way they are.
Right.
So,
and yeah, I mean, you can see that there's just like a few different types of material in there. More of the sort of fruity notes are coming out in the aroma. Yeah, I mean, it's quite nice.
Yeah, I was happy with how this turned out. And really happy to work with Stasia on it, who's also a tea drinker and a tea fan, and she was super excited to have some of her work on some tea products.
Cool. And so you guys will be going back to Yunnan pretty soon, is that right?
Yeah, hopefully mid-March, end of March. Probably be there about 4 months.
Okay.
So going to be really excited. Going to try and get to some new mountains and see some new places, and go to the old places and pick up more material and see what's new. It's really interesting to see the farmers and work with them over multiple years and see how they progress their skill and their craft and be able to like redo like their areas and stuff. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool. And where can folks that may not have heard of you guys before find out more about you?
CrimsonLotusTea.com, or we're really active on social media, primarily Instagram. Crimson Lotus Tea on Instagram, and
yeah, and you can follow their trip there, so you could see lots of cool pictures, I'm sure, of Yunnan as they're traveling in the next few months.
Yeah, first year we blogged a lot specifically on our site, but now we're finding it really awesome that we can interact directly with customers almost live on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis through our Instagram.
Yep, and so you'll probably, I'd imagine, be shipping a lot of teas back from China to here.
We've got our live shipping set up from there as well.
Yep, and you can also, Glen and Lamu, for previous videos, they've been on our show for a few years now. I think we've had probably 7 or 8 episodes with you guys on there. Yeah. So definitely go back into the archives and you can sort of track their progress throughout the years, which I think is also pretty cool. So,
if you're in Seattle.
Yeah, and if you're in Seattle, you can definitely look them up.
Phoenix Teashop.
Yeah, Phoenix Teashop. You guys are here on Fridays when you're in town.
Yep, when we're in town, noon to close.
Yep, and Phoenix Teashop, lots of teas here otherwise as well. So thank you guys for tuning in.
Awesome. All right, thanks guys. Have a good one.